Yeah, I'm hoping to attract some of those burned Bitcoiners to have the same, mentality and understanding, wanting to get out of the fiat system. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing at Schiff Gold with T-Gold, which is something I just launched. And people go to tgold.com and open up an account. But this is where you can buy gold and silver for storage, not to take delivery, so that we could use it as a medium of exchange for payments. And I'm going to be building out this ecosystem where eventually you'll be able to withdraw tokenized gold, which is the same concept as a stable coin, where with a stable coin, very interesting that a lot of people are describing gold being in a slump. Gold is above 3,900. A month ago, that's an all-time record high, right? A few months ago, if you'd have told anybody that gold would be at 3,900 and change in November, they'd have been, no way, it's not going to get up that high. All we did is we went a little bit too far, too fast. Gold got extended up to almost 4,400 and then had a sharp couple of day pullback. But gold is in a powerful uptrend. This is a massive bull market. And it's classic that you have this sharp decline. Almost all of the decline was one day, right? We had a 6.5% drop in a single day. It's gone down a little bit since then, but that was the lion's share of it. And it scared people, mainly the people who, got in recently because they saw gold going up every day and figured, well, let me just hop on board. It's going to be a smooth ride. And then they got a big drop. And obviously some people might have been cute. They might have used leverage. Maybe they were in the futures markets. Maybe they had some stops and they got ran. And so, but the psychology, even here, we're at this gold conference and the mood is not nearly as, exuberant as I would have expected. A lot of people are a little nervous, taking profits on their gold and on their gold stocks. The opposite of the Bitcoin conference that I was at in over the summer, where there were 35,000 people, right? We don't even have 1,000 people here. Yeah. There are 35,000 people, and everybody was optimistic. There was nobody that thought Bitcoin could go down. Everybody thought the sky's the limit, we're going to the moon, 1 million, 10 million, bet the farm, mortgage the house, put everything in Bitcoin, right? That's enthusiasm, right? Here, it's skepticism, it's fear. People, yes, they're bullish, but they're nervous, And so I think this is a big bull market. Silver is still around $46, $47. Yes, it's below the $54 that it hit a couple of weeks ago, but it's way above where it was a month ago. It's way above where it started the year. So I think it's just, the trends are intact. We shook out some of the, the new, buyers that, really, were leveraged or don't really have, belief in the trade. So the weak hands maybe have folded already. And we worked off an extremely overbought condition. Gold was as overbought as it's ever been. And so that's not the case anymore. And we got this correction out of the way, and we're still at 3,900 because we went up so far, so fast, we were able to have a correction, yet, we're really correcting to 4,000. I think 4,000 is about the support. Even though we're below it, it's like 3,000 was support. When we first broke above 3,000, we had several trips back down to 2,900, and then we took off for good. And I think we're doing now around 4,000 what we did earlier at 3,000.
The mentality around gold and Bitcoin couldn't be more different. At gold conferences, investors appear cautious, taking profits early and doubting the rally. Classic early-stage bull behavior. Compare that to crypto events, where the mood remains euphoric and expectations often reach extreme territory. Gold investors tend to be quieter, skeptical, seasoned. Crypto crowds? Younger, loud, and often all in. Historically, the calmer market wins the long game. Despite a temporary slide, gold has outperformed for the year, and silver remains well above its previous lows. Strong hands remain confident. Weak hands were shaken out. The real move may still lie ahead.
Right, but I think that was small compared to what's coming. And the real crash there was in a lot of the altcoins because Bitcoin bottomed out at around 104K. Now, just before we started this interview, Bitcoin was 99K. So we've taken out that low, which I think is significant. But I think the real leverage is in Bitcoin. And what I was mentioning before we did this interview, I was just watching Anthony Pompliano, AKA Pomp, right, who's a big Bitcoin promoter. He had a guy on his podcast, and they're talking about how rich Bitcoiners are buying all kinds of stuff without selling any of their Bitcoin. Now, one of the reasons they don't want to sell it, of course, is that when you sell it, you pay a tax, but you also affect the market. The reason they say nobody should sell their Bitcoin is because it's a Ponzi. It's a pyramid, right? You can't, everybody has to not sell. But what these guys are doing is instead of selling Bitcoin and buying the house or buying the car or the boat or the plane or whatever they're buying or taking a vacation, they are borrowing against their Bitcoin. And they're talking about this like it's this great thing that you don't have to sell your Bitcoin. Well, you don't have to sell your Bitcoin now. You have to sell it later at a much lower price when you get a margin call. Because when you pledge your Bitcoin and it's being held as collateral, if I've loaned you a bunch of money against your Bitcoin, if your Bitcoin falls in value to a predetermined level, I'm on the phone, I'm saying, hey, you need to send me some more money or some more Bitcoin, or I'm selling this Bitcoin. And if you don't have the money to meet the call, I sell your Bitcoin. The problem is those calls are going out all over the place. Everybody that's holding Bitcoin collateral is calling up the Bitcoin whale, or soon to be minnow, and like, hey, margin call, buddy. And they don't have the money. Because if they had the money, they would have spent it. The reason they borrowed against their Bitcoin is because they didn't have any money. All they had was Bitcoin. And so now you have all this Bitcoin being sold into a vacuum. But what's going to exacerbate it, and I've been warning about this since they started, these Bitcoin ETFs, right? Everybody loved them on the way up. But when you get mass liquidation from the ETFs, because the ETF buyers are not diehard Bitcoin maxis. I mean, after all, if they were, they wouldn't own ETFs. They'd own their own Bitcoin. These are just traders or regular investors who bought these ETFs because they were going up and because they were hyped and promoted, and people thought, hey, I'll buy this and I'll make some money. Well, when they see that they're down 20, 30, 40, 50%, people are going to say, I had enough. I'm going to cut my losses and I'm going to move my chips to something else. Well, I think that that's going to happen en masse. I think you're going to see, a year worth of buys liquidated over 1 or 2 days. And the question is, who is going to buy all that Bitcoin? We know who sold them all the Bitcoin. Those are all the whales, the OGs that had all the Bitcoin to cash out. But who's going to step up to the plate and buy that Bitcoin? And by the way, if you go back and look at a lot of the big Bitcoin crashes, all of a sudden there's a bunch of new tethers that come out of nowhere and buy up Bitcoin, right? And people are like, wow, they just counterfeiting these tethers and using tether kind of like the Fed, like to prop up the market. Well, when the ETFs sell, you can't buy with tether because the ETFs can't stick tether into the brokerage account of their customers. So they're going to have real dollars. So you're going to have actual buyers, not fake tether buyers, but real people are going to have to step up and catch that falling knife and say, oh, I'll buy that Bitcoin. I don't think they exist. Maybe there'll be some pressure by the Bitcoin community on Trump to get the U.S. government to bail out Bitcoin, right, to fill up the strategic reserve. But that would be real desperation if taxpayers had to come and bail out Bitcoin, especially when Trump's family is completely invested. It'd like be a bailout for his own family to use taxpayer money to buy up, Bitcoin. But it would also, the fact that the government needs to bail out Bitcoin proves that the whole thing is BS. It's not a strategic asset. It's not digital gold.
But it's not system relevant. Like, is it a systemic risk if Bitcoin fails?
I think so at this point. Because what about all the lenders? Who loaned all the money to these cryptos? But it's not just Bitcoin. It's the entire crypto industry that has been built around it. Because I think you take Bitcoin out and the whole thing collapses. You know, because it's all based on the value of Bitcoin, all the altcoins and everything that's going on. Bitcoin is the foundational asset, and the whole thesis that Bitcoin is the new gold, that Bitcoin's market cap is going to flip gold. And if that unravels, this whole thing collapses, and all the investors lose money, people lose their jobs. So I think it's bigger than the .com, for sure. You know, I don't know about whether it's bigger than housing and all the money that was borrowed there, but it's certainly bigger than the .com. And when the .com bubble burst, we did have a recession. We didn't have a financial crisis, but we had a recession. And I think there's more malinvestment, more misallocation of capital. But it's not, obviously, if it's only the Bitcoin bubble that pops, that's one thing. But what if the AI bubble pops? What if the whole tech bubble pops? Then you're talking some serious shit, right? Because if Bitcoin is just kind of a barometer of the appetite for risk, and if it's like the canary in the risk coal mine, and Bitcoin is like the subprime, right? And then the rest of the mortgage market. So we can see, I mean, look, we had this morning, Palantir came out with good earnings and they still crushed the stock. So who knows? Maybe people are starting to come to their senses on these valuations.
In the crypto world, a dangerous trend is unfolding. Wealthy holders are borrowing against Bitcoin instead of selling it. That means billions in loans depend on Bitcoin prices staying high. When prices fall, lenders issue margin calls, and collateral gets sold rapidly. This creates a vicious cycle. Lower prices trigger more forced selling. Add in the new Bitcoin ETFs, where investors are quick to sell during downturns, and the risk compounds. If panic hits, there may not be enough real buyers to absorb the selling. Bitcoin's structure has the potential to magnify every downturn. Fast.
Coming from a demographics perspective as well, like who owns Bitcoin? I would say it's the younger generation that has adopted it more rapidly than us, like the older generation.
Yeah, but they own small amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whales, although some of the whales are relatively young, but they're probably in their 30s and 40s because they bought it when they were younger. But I'd say the big money that controls Bitcoin, are much older. But a lot of the young people are going to get wiped out. Who have bought over the last few years.
That's what I was hinting at. So if a whole young generation gets wiped out financially, what does that mean?
Well,
what's the effect here?
Well, the good news is they didn't have that much to lose. And they also have a lot of years left to earn it back. And they learned a valuable life lesson.
Hopefully.
That might guide them in their later years. I'm not worried about the 20-somethings that lose all their money. I am more worried about the 60s, the retirees who got suckered into this in their IRAs and stuff like that. That's going to be a real problem. I'm also hoping that Bitcoin doesn't tarnish the whole idea of sound money and limited government and capitalism, because my message, and it's not just my message, but it's the message of freedom, Austrian school economics, sound money. That message was adopted by the Bitcoin community and used to promote Bitcoin, right? So all the things that I say, and then I use that as a reason to buy gold, the Bitcoin promoters say the exact same thing. In many cases, they just plagiarize me. I hear my exact words being spoken by all these guys, right? I know they're getting it from me because they'll use my analogies. But then they'll say, and this is why you have to buy Bitcoin, right? So I'm hoping that people that get burned in Bitcoin and lose their money don't, basically think the message was wrong. It was right. They just did the wrong thing as a result of it. So, yes, fiat money is bad. The Fed is bad. But just because Bitcoin collapsed doesn't mean that they were wrong, that the Fed is good. that there's no problem with fiat money. There is.
Yeah.
There's just also a problem with the Ponzi schemes and pyramids. And so I hope that, that isn't lost in it.
Yeah.
And I've always thought from the beginning that the government would end up seizing a lot more power because of all the losses in Bitcoin. Although now with the Trump administration, that may happen in the next administration. Because I mean they're gonna ride this ship down to the bottom of the ocean.
Bitcoin is no longer a fringe experiment. It has become deeply intertwined with investment firms, tech startups, lending platforms, and retail investors, including retirees. If Bitcoin crashes, the shock may ripple through broader markets already stretched by high-risk debt and speculative valuations. Some compare crypto today to the dot-com era, but much larger. If crypto collapses alongside AI-driven tech stocks, the result could be a deeper recession. Young traders may recover, but older investors could face irreversible losses. And worst of all, a crypto meltdown could wrongly discredit the valid distrust of fiat currency that pushed people toward Bitcoin in the first place.
I always have to laugh when I see Bitcoin being illustrated somewhere. It's always gold color.
Well, that's part of the fraud.
Yeah. That,
I mean, they make it look like a coin,
Yeah.
right? And make
a golden coin.
Yeah, and they put a big because it's actually a coin. It's nothing. It's just a string of numbers that mean nothing. You can't do anything with them. And the funniest thing is when people tell me it's energy. Like, how the hell is it? It's energy. It's not like I can't plug it into something, and I can't draw any energy out of Bitcoin.
It doesn't charge my iPad.
I mean, they make the mistake of thinking because energy is wasted to create Bitcoin, that somehow Bitcoin represents the value of that wasted energy.
Yeah, I don't follow
It's
that
like,
logic.
Yeah, it's like if I dig a hole and then I fill it back up again, the hole that I dug and filled back up doesn't have value because of all the time I spent digging it up and refilling it. I've created no value for all my effort. I wasted my labor doing nothing. And that's what happens when you create Bitcoin. It's a waste of resources because at the end of the day, you have nothing.
While Bitcoin fights for legitimacy, gold is quietly regaining ground as the world's neutral reserve asset. Governments from China to Turkey have increased gold purchases to record levels, preparing for a future less dependent on Western currencies. New digital gold platforms now offer the functionality crypto promised, but backed by real metal. Tokenized gold enables fast payments, fractional ownership, and digital transfers without relying on unstable speculative markets. As fiat inflation persists and geopolitical tensions rise, gold is being rediscovered not only as a store of value, but as a modern, real-world monetary system.
Yeah, I'm hoping to attract some of those burned Bitcoiners to have the same mentality and understanding, wanting to get out of the fiat system. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing at Schiff Gold with T-Gold, which is something I just launched. And people can go to tgold.com and open up an account. But this is where you can buy gold and silver for storage, not to take delivery, so that we could use it as a medium of exchange for payments. And I'm going to be building out this ecosystem where eventually you'll be able to withdraw tokenized gold, which is the same concept as a stable coin, where with a stable coin, you have a third party that holds dollars, and then you get a token that is backed by those dollars. And instead of transacting in the dollars, you transact in the token. Yeah. Well, the same thing would happen with tokenized gold. We have a third party that stores your gold, but you get a token that represents ownership of that gold, and you can now transfer any portion of that to any third party and use it as a payment, or you can be paid. So people could use gold as a medium of exchange in addition to using it as a store of value. So we can remonetize gold. And so people who have been thinking about Bitcoin as some alternative monetary system, when that falls apart, hopefully they'll realize that gold can do all the things that Bitcoin promised to do, but can't.
Interesting. Tether is doing the same thing already.
Of course, yeah,
Right?
Tether Gold.
Yeah. They're buying 1 or 2 tons a month already in
Oh,
physical.
they're
Or
not only are
probably
they
more,
buying
but-
physical gold, they're buying the royalty companies. Several of the royalty companies I own, Tether's been the biggest buyers.
Yeah.
They're just, but this money is supposed to be dollars, right? Although they have some gold because they have Tether Gold. I was surprised, they didn't call me up and try to buy T-Gold from me because that's, my website is tgold.com.
Yeah.
Figure that it could be Tether.
best play. Absolutely.
Silver continues to trail gold, but remains a compelling opportunity. Industrial demand is exploding due to electric vehicles, solar power, and energy storage technologies, especially in China and India. Historically, silver has surged late in bull markets, rising multiples higher than gold. And affordability matters. As gold prices move further out of reach, silver becomes the entry point for everyday investors. Its dual role as a monetary and industrial metal gives it a unique edge in uncertain times. With sentiment still subdued and fundamentals strong, silver may be the surprise leader in the next phase of precious metal growth.